Barbecue sauce?
Yes, I wouldn't mind.
Would you like to try a sample?
Sure.
Which one?
It doesn't matter. Just give me one.
All right, let me give you our lemon pepper. You can go ahead and grab a spoon.
Sure. Wow. Man, y'all make someone want to taste every one of them, right? Ooh, man, that's good. What I tell you, that's plum pleasing. What kind of barbecue sauce is that? Who's created this thing?
We make it ourselves at
Y'all
home.
make it yourself? Oh my goodness. Yeah, let me get 3 bottles of that.
Will that be cash or card?
That'll be cash.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome to Unapologetic and Free. I'm Lekia.
And I'm Shar.
We are sisters by blood
And friends by choice.
We are excited to come and bring you this episode tonight, or whenever you end up watching it or listening to it. But what's special about this episode is that we are celebrating our 2-year Unapologetic and Free talk show anniversary. So y'all know me and my ideas. I said, oh, we should just do maybe like a 2-year anniversary special, right? Like we launched in the month of February and it's been 2 years, which I was just kind of like, it's been 2 years, right? And so we just thought that it would be fun to come back and kind of talk about how we got to 2 years and, you know, just have some fun with this 2-year anniversary. So Sharnae, why don't you kind of talk about how Unapologetic and Free talk show even came about? Like, how did we even get here?
Oh my goodness. I'm having warfare over here with my technology, but please bear with me. Okay, so how did this come about? So Lekia and I, every single day, we talk to each other in the morning on our way to work, and we talk to each other on our way home from work. So we have some really in-depth conversations and stuff. And so we started listening to this podcast. An aunt told me about it, then I introduced her to it, and then we just started listening to the podcast. I'm not trying to plug the podcast. That's why I'm not saying the name of the podcast. So they started advertising how they created their podcast. And so one night we were talking on the phone and I said, we can do that. Like we have some really good conversation. So let's start a podcast. And so I had said, she goes, okay, well, what should the name be? I said, well, I stand strong and I'm unapologetic and I'm free. And so then she's like, yeah. And then we both started doing our little research and playing with stuff. And then it came together and Wendy was our very first guest. And thank you for being, willing to come on and partake in it.
Of course.
So how we got started.
Yes. And so 2 years later, but even in that, we were remiss. We do want to introduce our guests. And we want to welcome them on to celebrate this 2-year anniversary with us. So we'll go ahead and do that. Wendy, if you want to go ahead and start first and just kind of introduce yourself, just tell the people what you want to know or what you want to say about being here or about Unapologetic and Free talk show.
Hello, everybody. My name is Wendy Figueroa, and I was their first guest. Lekia and I used to work together, so that's how I know her. And then I've been introduced to her sister kind of via phone and via all this technology that we have. So that's how I came to know them. I cannot really believe that 2 years have passed by since y'all started this. I don't know how to take that really. I don't know if that's, I mean, of course it's a good thing that y'all are still doing it and still have the show, but I feel like when you say 2 years, I'm like, it just, just like a blur. Doesn't seem like 2 years. But I was on the program and we talked about mental health, and here we are 2 years later. Mental health is, that's almost the buzzword, nowadays. Everybody is talking about it. Everybody is trying to advocate for it. You see many celebrities, you see many athletes, kind of just, reclaiming their time. So it's interesting that that being the first topic, and then 2 years later, how, I guess in a sense, how that blossomed, right? So everybody now is into self-care, taking care of themselves. And so, yeah, like y'all were on the forefront of what is now a mini movement, right?
Right.
So,
Good point.
good, kudos to you ladies to start a podcast and just start talking like regular, real people, having real, regular conversations with people and how they motivate themselves, how they deal with things. So kudos to you. Congratulations to your 2-year anniversary. Thank you so much for having me back on. And the only thing I guess I want everybody to know is in 2 years, I'm now a grandma for the first time. So
Yay!
super excited about that. So
That is exciting.
So what's your name?
my grandbaby's name is Uriah Grace Garcia.
And what is she going to call you?
She's going to call me Gigi, and I call her Little Gigi. So it's Big Gigi and Little Gigi.
Got it.
Okay.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations. We're
Thank
excited.
you.
I'm in no rush to be a Gigi grandma, grandma, none of that. I'm in no rush. And
I'm Queenie. So they call me Queenie.
Queenie. Okay. I like that.
thank you. And we also have Miss Tracee Wilkerson. She is also a guest with us. She was a guest on our show. She's been on the show, and she was very instrumental in our launch of our series, You Don't Know My Story. So Unapologetic and Free Talk Show launched a series. Fun fact for those who don't know, we're going to get into some other fun facts, but we launched a series called You Don't Know My Story. And so Tracee Wilkerson was our first guest on that. And Tracee, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us what you do and how you even came to know us in Unapologetic and Free.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. Well, first of all, I met Lekia at a vendor event, which was really awesome. We got to know each other through that and Facebook, some mutual friends. And she heard a little bit about my story and thought, oh my gosh, because most people just go like they can't believe it, first of all. But I am an independent sales director for Mary Kay Cosmetics. And my story took 2 episodes long, right? Like
That's another fun fact. Good point.
It was long. It was long. I had a lot to say. I was that woman that was codependent, but a very independent, hardworking woman, but codependent in my relationship with my previous spouse, right? And that is not, very healthy, first of all, for women, right? It's not good for your mental health. And there was mental health issues that I had to deal with my ex-spouse, which then passed on to my children because I had to deal with bipolar disorder with my son. But, and healthcare is so important, mental care and all of it connected. I am actually a Reiki master, if anybody knows what Reiki is, and a certified mind body fitness coach. So I try to be holistic in everything from outside inside, right? I want my outside to reflect what I feel like inside, and what my inside feels like reflected on my outside. So I love the episodes. First of all, that was a very good idea, because I think when people see people and they do a prejudgment of people, right? They just assume that, oh, they got it all together, or they may just, you may just look at somebody and think they don't have anything together, but they're really like the happiest people on the planet. You know what I mean?
Right.
So you just can't prejudge people. And, and I think that's, you don't have to be, what was my quote? I can't even requote my own quote. You don't have to live your struggle. You don't have to be your struggle.
That's right.
Your struggle does not define you. You don't have to wear it on you every day. And I really, and that's the thing, is the practice of mental health has to do with practicing your thoughts and emotions, but having a good circle and a good platform to listen to people that have come through it, right? Because your examples are so important. You're living in a household that doesn't support you mentally, you may need to, find some new friends, a new circle, and it really does help. So thank you, ladies, so much for what y'all do, because it really has helped a lot of people. I've had friends watch my video and some of the other videos and just be like, oh my gosh, that is awesome. I love it. So thank you. And so we're going to keep spreading the word, and 2 years has gone by very fast.
Yes. Because the other irony of this fun fact, and Sharnae, feel free to drop fun facts but the other fun fact is, so we launched originally in February, and then we launched You Don't Know My Story in February. And then now here we are, right? 2 years in February doing our 2-year. And so that, I don't know that at the time that we launched You Don't Know My Story, if we did that on purpose or not to do it in February. Oh, okay, so I don't think we did, but even in that, it's just, again, fun to be able to see how February, and then February's love month, because I was thinking about that today, and I was like, how did we even end up in February of all, right? Like love month, and we just decided to launch in February, but we were just had an idea. We just was like, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. We stayed on each other to do it. And so here we are. And so one of the fun facts, another fun fact that we have is that when we started this, the whole hook was we were 2 sisters in the same state living in different cities. And so we came together. She's in one place, so we're on this internet, right? But fun fact, there has been in the 2 years, 1 episode where we actually recorded it together. We were in the same place. And the fun fact about that is we were actually in our hometown when we recorded it. So we were together. It's only 1 episode. So in 2 years that we recorded together, and we did it in our hometown, and it was our spring break episode. And so it had a Vegas theme. It had I shared pictures in that episode. So if you haven't seen it, go back and look for the spring break episode. But it had pictures of our actual childhood home where my mother still lives today. And so we shared some pictures of our neighborhood growing up. And again, we use that as an opportunity for us to come together and be able to do that episode. So just a fun fact.
Yay, us.
Yes. I'd like to do more in person. It's just the times that we're together. It's like for Christmas, it's for Thanksgiving. And I try to nudge her. So I'm going to say, I try to nudge Sharnae to say, oh, whenever we're together, because I just feel like whenever we're in the same place, like we should just make an episode happen, right? Just because, but she's not always there. And then the other thing about this is we don't ever force episodes, right? Like if we don't have anything to say, if we haven't done our research, we never want to just get on unprepared, unless we've decided that we're just going to have a conversation. But again, so we don't like to do that. And so hopefully in the future, we'll be able to do more episodes where we are together in the same place. I'd like to see that happen.
But even if we don't have any research, we at least have a talking point, a topic of what we're going to discuss, and it just freely flows. So that's the amazing thing about us. Where I'm strong, she weak. Where she weak, I'm strong.
As I'm facilitating, do most of the talking. And sometimes when we started this, I would say, okay, can you talk? Or we would do the agenda where I would put her name and say, okay, you say this, I say this, you say this, because again, we wanted it to be that balance. And I just would feel like sometimes, like even now, I'm doing all the talking. And so,
but I talk all day to kids, because I'm a teacher. So I'm talking all day and presenting all day. So if I can get a chance to allow somebody else to take the forefront, I'm all for it. So I pass it back to you.
So she takes advantage of that. So just want to review some of the episodes. So the other fun fact, why do I have all the fun facts? But okay. So another fun fact is, for the most part, season 1, we have 5 episodes. And so some of those episodes we did the mental health one, and then we did aspects of relationships. And so in that aspects of relationships, we had a special guest. It was one of my good best friends from Las Vegas, who, again, we met each other through work. I have this tendency of meeting people through work, and then they just don't go away. We just form these relationships. And we're like, okay, we're in this thing. Like you're not gonna get rid of me now, right? We become family. And so we did
work. That's why.
What'd you say?
You don't have friends outside of work. That's why.
Well, I look at it this way. My friends in work, my co-workers turn into friends outside of work. Because where do we spend majority of our time? At work. So it's like, I typically want to get along and be cool with the people I work with, right? And so for me, that's why I usually develop those relationships outside of work, so that after we're no longer working together, we still have a relationship, right? And so that's just how it ends up going. And then we did Free to Grieve. Free to Grieve was a special one for me because at the time that we did Free to Grieve, my son had lost his father. His father passed away. And that hit me harder than what I thought. You know, I didn't know what I was going to feel until it happened. And then I've just found myself kind of in these emotions. And I want to just plug and be grateful for my husband now, James Peters, that he supported me through that, right? Through that grieving process, grieving for my son, right? For my son's loss. Right. And so I was just grateful that my husband was able to allow me. And so that's where Free to Grieve came from. And we had that episode about grieving and that whole grieving process. Sharnae, do you have any comments or anything you want to say as it relates to the Free to Grieve?
No, but I will say this, that the Free to Grieve kind of prepared me, because in 2022, our family took 2 losses back to back. So I always remember going back to that episode and how the stages of grief, we all go through different stages and we're not going to hit them in the exact order. And so in our family, we lost our dad's younger brother, but I guess he's like in the middle, whatever. He passed away, and then a week, Lekia, a week or 2 weeks to the day.
Almost a week to 2 weeks.
A week to 2 weeks, my dad's younger sister passed away. And the uncle that passed away was the caregiver for the aunt that had passed away. So we took a big hit in 2022 as far as our family, but I was able to draw on the episode of Free to Grieve. And I went through all the stages, the 5 stages of it. And they didn't hit, sometimes I stayed in one of the stages a little bit longer than, some people. And Lekia was like, instrumental. And she's like, nobody can tell you how long you're going to grieve.
Absolutely.
There's no specific time on grieving. So that helped me get through it a lot.
And
now, episode, what?
I was going to say, and that's still a valid point, that again, if I had any tidbit for anyone listening or that's going to watch this, is that no one can tell you how long to grieve in each stage. Don't feel like you're pressured or you have to feel like I got to be over it in a certain amount of time. You have to decide and you have to move at the pace that you're comfortable with, and that's going to be in the best interest of your mental health.
Well said.
So after that, we did react versus respond. Excuse me.
Oh, I remember that episode.
That one was fun because we used some scenarios. So we were able to use some real life like videos where we were talking about how to respond versus reacting, right? So often things happen, we're put in positions where you're caught off guard. And when you're caught off guard, what do you do when you're caught off guard? How do you respond? Or is this something I'm supposed to react to? And we really just kind of talked about those differences.
Because, especially in the workforce, you have those coworkers who think they the boss, and then they have a tendency to come and say something to you. And, I don't know about you, y'all, but me, I'm quick to say, who do you think you're talking to? But that's that reacting and not responding. So that episode was strictly for me.
So
y'all don't have them situations where you have to get your soul under control.
all the
Yeah.
time. You just smile and hold it in for a second. There's a lot
That-
going on here, even though it's smiling, right? You're like,
I'm not good at that, Miss Tracee. My face
No.
usually just literally goes to,
no, and that's when everybody's in trouble if I do that. That means something's real wrong. Because otherwise you need to fix that and I'll come back with a smile.
But having worked with Wendy and us being in some situations together where we was looking at each other's facial expressions, like, especially when you're in meetings and you're like, and if you're not even next to each other and you across the room and you lock eyes and you see that face like, did she just, did he just? No, and then you're forced to say, okay, do I respond? Do I react? Let me get it together. Let me woosah. I've had some situations even since that episode in my current job now where I'm literally on these meetings like, did she just, thinking to myself though, being able to not react, but thinking to myself like, I really feel like this person is disrespecting me, like inside, but I'm just like, okay, let me get this straight. And so just having to go through that whole process. So
Where my inside voice comes out. And I'm like, oh, did I say that out loud? I thought I would say that in my head. And my students will say, yes, you said that out loud. And I'm like, oh, excuse me, please forgive me. I'm so sorry. Don't go home and tell your parents.
I
So
usually
as I-
ask a question. I usually will just say, I'm sorry, what did you just say? And when they repeat it, most times people kind of understand, well, I probably said that wrong, or somebody might mistake what I just said as something else. And they usually kind of rephrase or they'll slow down and then say it again. And then I'm like, oh, okay. We cool now. We cool.
Yeah.
that's a good way of looking at it.
It's that you give them a little bit of grace, right? You smile,
Yeah,
you give them a
little bit,
second
yeah.
to fix themselves, and then you go, oh, what was that? Yeah.
Can you repeat that for me, please? What did you just say?
Right.
I'm at that to Grace.
Right. So as I stated, we did season 2, but then we did You Don't Know My Story. So we intertwined those. So during season 1, then we implemented the You Don't Know My Story. So, they kind of intertwined. But in that You Don't Know My Story, I do want to give another fun fact, right? So of the episodes of You Don't Know My Story, Tracee's, not a surprise, right? That your episode 1 was the most viewed episode in the series and as a whole. So as a whole, unapologetic and free talk show from episode 1 to all of them, yours was the most viewed. And even in that series of You Don't Know My Story, your episode 1 was the most viewed episode.
Oh, that's awesome. They didn't want to watch part 2. It was too long. They're like, oh, maybe I should find out the end, but that's a long story.
Right. And that's what I thought. I thought like, and you would think that the second one, because what's the ending, right? Because the way we tried to do it was to cut it so that you had to be able to come back and listen to episode 2 in order to kind of figure out but people are like you said, once they heard all of what you went through, they see you now. So the reality is you obviously made it through, right? So now
People always ask me though, they still ask me, how did you get out of it? Like, I mean,
now you can start saying, you know what, go watch this
Watch the
episode
video.
over here. And
I did. I sent it to 2 people yesterday.
So
I was
yeah,
like, I can't do it. It's too long. You need to go watch that.
right. Another fun fact about You Don't Know My Story is that we had a combination of men and women. So there was men that came on and was able to share their stories. There was a couple came on, so a husband and a wife was able to share their stories. And so it really gave people. And so even in that, You Don't Know My Story, I want to tell just another fun fact about how that even came about, right? We were actually in a family like Bible study that we were having with our family in Las Vegas. And we were just on there, we were just talking. And one of our aunts said, a lot of people don't know my story. She said something to that effect, right? Like a lot of people don't know my story. And I said, well, have you ever told your story, right? Like, how would anybody know your story? And so she had shared her story on something, not like this, but I don't know what it was. And I didn't even know. I'm sorry, what was it?
It was an interview.
Okay, yeah, so she had got interviewed and it was a YouTube video that she sent us and we were able to watch it and somebody basically had interviewed her. And so we said, oh, that's a great idea. Like, you don't know my story. Now, we initially did reach out to her and say, hey, we got this idea from you, right? You said you want to share your story. Hey, we already had the talk show platform, right? So Unapologetic and Free was already going. And so we said, hey, we want to start this series over here. Maybe there are other people, right, who have stories they want to share. And so we did give her that opportunity. It just didn't work, right? Schedules conflict, things happened. And over the course of time, we just didn't get a chance for her to get on. Still open and available for her to come on. I said all of that to say, if you know, or if you're listening or watching, if you have a story, right? Because this is the thing. We're creating a place where you can share that story. And sometimes the sharing of the story is just about you, your healing, right? Your opportunity to be able to share. But then again, for others to be able to hear and to know what, like Tracee said at the beginning, somebody you could be sitting next to, you don't know what they've gone through. You can't judge a book by its cover, right? And so we do want to extend that and say that we are always looking for individuals who are willing and open to want to share their story if you feel like you have a story to tell.
Absolutely. Come tell us your mess and how it turned into a message. Come tell us how it turned into a testimony.
That's
I like
right.
I like that.
Yes. And so then as we, in season 2, though, we did have some specific episodes. So again, fun fact, it was 5 episodes in our season 2. That was not on purpose either. Like a lot of these things, it just happened that way, right? And so 5 episodes in season 1, 5 episodes in season 2. But some of those episodes in season 2, we did a cheating episode. We talked about cheating. What is it? What does it look like? Aspects of cheating, like all of the whole nitty gritty. Is it cheating, right? We did some scenarios. We did an episode on gaslighting. I went through a phase, a small one, where I thought maybe I was a gaslighter, like maybe I have been gaslighting in my past. I knew definitely that I was in a position where somebody was gaslighting me, right? If you haven't heard my story, I also did a You Don't Know My Story. But so, we just did that episode so we can bring awareness to gaslighting and what gaslighting is.
I need to go watch that episode.
Which ties into that mental health thing as well, because that was the buzzword, not too long ago. It was either narcissism, gaslighting, they all tie together. So it was like, okay, I was talking to Lekia about it, and she's like, I'm not really familiar with this. And so when we started researching it, she was like, I think I might have been a gaslight or I was gaslight. And I'm like, see, this is what this is supposed to do.
Right.
And then I need to watch that episode.
Yeah. After that,
before you go to that, I want to say about the gaslighting. What I discovered in that is the main aspect of the gaslighting is the intent. And my intent was not to manipulate. My intent was not intentionally, right? Because that's the key factor of that gaslighting. People are manipulating on purpose. Even if you trace it, and if you haven't, go to the episode, because we talk about where gaslighting even came from. It was a play where a husband was literally making his wife think that she was ill and that she was sick, and she really wasn't. But he was doing that for his personal gain. So he purposely was doing that and making her believe something that wasn't true. And so again, I just wanted to say that on this, that whole gaslighting piece is connected to the intent. And if you are intentionally choosing to manipulate someone to get them to do what you want them to do, or to get them to do what you don't want them to, right? So I'm gonna gaslight you because I don't want you to leave me. So I'm gonna do intentional manipulative things to make you think something so you won't do it. Okay, that's my spiel. Go watch the episode. Gaslighting season 2. On YouTube, you can find it on Facebook. Of course, when we air this, we're gonna always have the links on where you can find the episodes. Go ahead.
Okay, so our episode after that was the child support episode. And this one was a really fun one because we had 2 male guests. And so one was my actual son, my firstborn, and then the other guest was my best friend. So they had 2 different takes on child support and two different situations on child support. And then Lekia, go ahead, tell them, being a
was
woman.
able to bring the aspect of being the woman on child support. I was a woman who was court ordered to pay child support, check being garnished, like had to go through that whole process, daughter graduating, having arrears that I had to pay, and all of these different things that I went through that you don't typically hear women on child support, and then having to pay and all of those things. And so it was definitely, like she said, a very fun episode. And one of the focuses of that was, is it child support, or what was it? Child support or parent support?
Or spousal support.
Spousal support, right? We were talking about, is the child support being spent on the kids versus living lifestyle? That's what it was. The lifestyle. Is it child support or like to support the woman or the whoever's lifestyle, and making sure, right? You have those people who feel like, if I'm paying child support, every dime of my child support is supposed to go on my child.
And then we skit where there was it was a skit where there was a guy who had a child with a woman, and she had 4 other kids, including his. So she called him and said, oh, I need some money for food. Well, instead of the father bringing money, he brought a Happy Meal for his child. But the debate was, should he have brought food for all the kids? Or he was like, I'm providing for my child.
Right.
Talked about that in a child support episode, like, what is the child? Is the child support supposed to be used for that individual child, or is it for the needs of
All the children.
all the children?
Yeah.
That was a good episode, because I remember watching it and literally I was like, and I was like, wow, I'm reliving my own child support, experience. And just really quick, while we're on this topic, but like, for me, I was married twice. So I have husband number 1, child 1, husband number 2, child 2. And both of them paid support, but one paid support not through the state. The other one ended up paying through the state. And so the one that didn't pay through the state, we had an easier time with stuff, because he never questioned me. And it wasn't one of those cases where, I know a lot of guys pay child support, and let's say they have the kid's birthday, right? And so the mom comes with the kid, the dad comes, and the dad may see mom in a different vehicle. I won't say new, but I'm gonna just say different vehicle than what she had before. They're like, oh, my child support is going to your new car. No, but people need to sometimes figure out that you paying your part of your support to help support your child only frees up the money that I make at my job. So it allows me to be able to buy me a new car, but it ain't got nothing to do with your little 200 or your 300, or, it just don't, but so many men, walk around in that mindset like that. And then father number 2 that went through the state, interestingly enough, he wasn't paying it through the state. We had an agreement, and I happened to ask him, I'm like, hey, your son's medications they've gone up to this. He's now in a different size, size of clothes. So, so I kind of put my receipts out, had my information, and I was like, look, this is costing me this here, this here, this here, kind of added it all up together. And I said, hey, so starting, I'm gonna give you maybe 3 months. I'm gonna need at least $70 more a month to cover these expenses. And he was newly married at the time, and he let her just, and so it got to a point where she said, well, we'll just let the state take care of it. And I was like, oh,
Okay.
you know, okay, if that's what we're gonna do, then that's what we're gonna do. And so he let her, you know, kind of finagle that. And so I was thinking to myself, well, this is my child. If we're gonna go through the state, let me do it, you know, let me enter it first or whatever. Long story short, I forgot, because when we had got divorced, I had me a margarita downtown and I was waving my papers like, woo. And I came home, threw it at the top of my closet, forgot about it. Well, when you go through the state, they want to say, are you divorced? And I was like, yeah, I'm divorced. And they're like, let's have a copy of the decree. I'm like, okay, I got that. Go to the closet, copy it, sent it. Like I said, I forgot what it said. As long as it said I was divorced, I was good.
That's all I'm at.
So when the state got it, they're looking through it, and there was a part in there that said something to the effect of what he was supposed to be paying. And so the state sent me a list to itemize, and they were like, for these months, what did you get? Put down what I got. I gave him credit for every single penny because I was like, I don't want to hear it. I sent it back, and they just said, oh, well, your divorce decree says this. Your paperwork says this. There's a difference, and this is what you need to pay now. So he went from what would have been maybe $270 a month to $490 a month, because the divorce decree said you were supposed to be paying this, and she's giving you credit, and this is the difference in the credit. And it was like $110 a month for 36 months at the time. I was like, hey, but your wife said she wanted to go through the states. We went through the state.
That's right.
Hey,
So yeah, that made it even more interesting because, you know, even in that I had my own where I was the one, I would have two different perspectives. So I was the one putting somebody on child support at some points in my life. And then I ended up being the one on child support. So it was also fun because we got to look at both sides of that as well. And so definitely a good one.
My situation is I've never gotten child support.
Oh,
well, you know, it was in my situation, you know, when the ex-husband is a wanted fugitive, I'm not going to get anything, right? So but there is paperwork there that if he ever gets caught, that I will get all the money in arrears. Can't hold my breath, but whatever.
You never know. I've heard stories where people didn't pay, right? And then let's say they ended up getting on disability or they got a settlement. I heard a case where somebody got a settlement one time and they had a child support order. They had all this stuff. It was just arrears. It was just adding up. And then when they got the settlement, they awarded the child thousands and thousands of dollars because of what, like you said, it's just sitting there. If ever one day, well, that one day came and they got a big payday. So it is possible, y'all.
It is right. My kids will be very happy when that day comes.
And so the next episode we did after the child support episode was Church Hurt. And another fun fact is that Church Hurt was the most viewed episode in our season 2. So a lot of people watch that Church Hurt. And my emphasis and my purpose and point of wanting to do that episode, we had a guest on there who shared her own personal story about Church Hurt. But my whole point in that was the church as a whole did not hurt you. We have to stop blaming the church for what people do.
yes.
Even if that people was a group of people that go to that church, the church itself did not hurt you. And even if, let's just say it was the pastor, right? Let's just say the pastor did something, it's still not the church. And we talked about that and those aspects and just making sure. And again, so that's my plight. That's my appeal to, again, it's not the church and we can't blame the church as a whole for what individual people do as it relates to you know, you being offended or somebody saying something, the church doing something. And so that was the most viewed episode in our season 2.
Because again, it connected to, you don't know my story. So you don't know that person's story of whatever hurt they've been to. And we know hurt people hurt people. So we really wanted, and the guest that we had on, she wrote a book about church hurt as well. So that was kind of cool too. And then after that, our episode, this was another fun episode. This episode was like, it had my anxiety at 100 with this next episode because it was parenting, talking about being a parent. And we had special guests. So my oldest son was a guest, and Lekia's oldest child, her daughter, was a guest. And so we had to be open and vulnerable to what they had to say about our parenting skills.
But before she goes on, she was so much in anxiety, and just that episode almost didn't even happen. Right? Like, because she kept putting it off, and it was supposed to had happened months prior. I want to say, like, in the first season, before we even started doing You Don't Know My Story, we were supposed to do that parenting episode. And I believe in people, you have to be ready for it. And she just wasn't ready. Right? And so I respected that. We respected that. And we just waited until it was time.
Whew, man, that was, because as a parent, that's like we're all, mature women. So the type of parenting that we were raised with is not the type of parenting that is happening today. And so I had to be, and I've made amends with my kids to say, hey, I'm sorry. I did what I thought was best. And maybe that wasn't the best way to handle it, but that's how I thought it was best, And so just hearing them talk about how we parented. And then my niece, I had raised her for about a year, because Lekia was in the military and she was deployed. So I had to be a parent to her, and to hear her say, like, oh, Aunt Charnay,
And so that was cool.
And I was like, what is she talking about?
Right. And it was fun. My daughter had both our kids, they had a lot of good, valid feedback, valid points, valid perspectives. And my daughter introduced the whole pet parent perspective, like being a pet parent and the responsibility and all that it takes, which is why I don't have pets. But again, she introduced that aspect, and to that point, that's why she has chosen not to have children yet, right? And that's why I said, I'm not in no hurry. Don't worry about rushing to make me a GMA, because I'm good. But so she introduced that. And so I thought that gave it a different and a unique perspective on that parenting when you just have pets. And so definitely that was a nutshell, all of the episodes. The other fun fact is that we did do 8 stories of You Don't Know My Story. So there are 8, although Tracee's episode was the only episode we did 2 parts, there was 8 individual stories of different individuals coming on and sharing their story. And it definitely was, it's been fun. And that series was fun. That series was eye-opening.
Each series, each episode in that series had a different theme with the guests that came on to share their stories. So it was just amazing, even to the point now where my students have said, oh, I listened to your podcast. When are you going to have me on the podcast? I want to be a guest on the podcast. I'm like, tell me what you want to talk about and we'll make it happen.
Love that.
Yes.
That sounds cool.
Yes. I feel like we just recently did, and I don't have it on here. I'm trying to look at my notes, but we just did an episode, but that's where my mind is. Like, what did we talk about in this last episode we did? Oh, adult responsibility, right? So we're in season 3. So that's where I'm at. We're technically in season 3, right? And so episode is going to be in season 3, the 2-year anniversary, but we just recently did do that episode about the responsibility of taking care of our adult parents and how adult children and what that responsibility is, like when your parents are sick and for us, we live out of state. We don't live in the same state with our mother, and she's ill, and we have a stepfather. And like, what is that whole process? What's the responsibility? What am I obligated to? And I've gotten a lot of different feedback, right? You have both sides of that where it says, oh, if it's my mom or my dad, I'm going to do whatever I can, blah. But then I have a family, right? I have my own family, my own children. I have my own job. I'm not in a position to just pick up and leave and go fly back home and just be able to take care. That doesn't mean I don't want to, right? That doesn't mean I don't care about my mother. And if the situation presented itself where, we don't have a choice, I already nominated Sharnae. I mean, she's the older sister. So, I mean, naturally, she's got to go first. Like, that's just automatic. So,
well, she lives with chef that do a lot of cooking.
Yeah,
I don't cook. I only cook for me. And
right. We talked about that too. If she came to live with us, who's she gonna come live with, right? And so again, I'm always nominating. I mean, I just feel like you're the oldest. So as the oldest, but to her point, we cook. Well, not we, but my husband cooks. So if my mom wants to eat, although the way my husband cooks, my mom's always like, that's too much. Why did he cook that? So she probably still wouldn't really eat as much because she thinks that we eat too much or that he cooks too much food. But
have a home cooked meal every day. She wouldn't get that with me. But also, how we ended that episode too. How would you want your children to take care of you when you get older? And I said personally, I want to live with my kids because I want to come in and drop my clothes off at the door and turn off all the lights and eat all the food.
Yep.
So I want to live with them.
Leave my plates in the room.
Right.
They come get it.
Right. And I said the same thing. I said I would want my children to take care of me. Right. Like if I can't live with them, then please make sure I'm in a nice, fancy, good.
If you have more than one child, do you look at each one and say, I don't know, you might just leave me to the dogs? Like my son was just here and he brought us dinner. Like he like goes fishing and brings us fish and he wants to like cook for us. My daughter's like, that's nice. But she's still 17, so she's still at home. She still get that kid mentality, right? Where he's like out on his own, he's got his freedom. So he appreciates us again. So he comes and visits. But you just have to look at your kids and kind of wonder who would be the one who would cook and who wouldn't, you know what I mean?
That. Because I think both. My kids have an age gap. So my oldest is about to be 23 and then my youngest just turned 13. So it's like, I feel like if it happened now, my oldest definitely would. And then depending on if it happened later, I feel like where I am with me and my son's relationship, he's still a boy mom. I mean, I'm still a boy mom. He still loves his mom. So I feel like he would because now he has traits where he's always like, do you want this? Do you want me to buy you this? Mm-hmm. What did you eat? Like taking care of me. So I feel like he would take care of me also. What about you, Wendy?
Wendy's making a face. She's like, I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know. My kids have an age gap too. So one just turned 31 the other last week, and the other one will be 23 in April. So the 23-year-old, he cooks, and he cooks well. So if I'm gonna eat, I guess I need to be over at his. Because my daughter, she don't do the cooking. She don't do the cooking at all. I don't know. I think it would be my son. My son I think he would just come on in and just take care of me. My daughter would probably be the one to she's probably the more organized one. So she would probably be like, what are mom's bills? And so she would take care of the bills and maybe put money in my bank account so I could, do whatever. She would be that type of person. And then he would actually probably be my caregiver. So.
Okay.
And then you got to take in consideration if you're, my son's 23 and my daughter is 17, right? So there's, it's 5.5 years. But my son, I started thinking about it. If my son gets married, like his wife isn't gonna want nothing to do with me. Like she's gonna be like,
don't say that.
Well, I'll love her to death, and I'm sure she'll love me. But it's it's that like, what side do the kids take? That should be an episode, right? Like, how sons usually kind of like attached to the wife. They do a lot of things, and then the wife, like you have a daughter that has a husband. Like, does she attach more to the husband side of the family, or does she bring? There's a different dynamic. Sometimes, like, I'm very close to my husband's family, and I don't feel like he's very close to mine. But my family's a hot mess, so I don't blame him. So, but it's one of those things, like, where do your kids, who are they closest to, right? Like, my mom can get the help from me because I'm more nurturing. My brother's like taking care of his wife and that side of the family, his wife's side of the family. Like, it's the dynamic is so interesting, right? When you have, a boy and a girl,
Mm-hmm.
right? Yep. Like, what, are they coming back to take care of you? If they get a wife, are they over there?
Now,
like,
that's the interesting thing with my daughter. My daughter's soon-to-be husband, his family dynamic is odd. So he gets along with our side of the family more than he does his own family.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I think he would also kind of go along and gel with my daughter. He would be more low, like, hey, is mom taken care of? What does she need? That type of thing. Now, in their relationship, he's the one that cooks. I've just never eaten anything that he's made. So I don't know. But my son, we're good on the cooking. We're good on the cooking.
I think that's our biggest concern, is if we're going to get fed.
Right.
How we gonna
Yes,
eat?
because I have to eat. We gotta eat. Gotta eat. So as we are wrapping this up, again, grateful that you guys came on. We want to ask you, and viewers, listeners as well, you can chime in after and whenever this airs, but what topics would you like to see or hear from us, or maybe even something? Go ahead.
I'm like, ooh. When y'all were talking about church hurt, right? That reminded me of something that I hear a lot of people say, and I went through this probably almost 30 years, but being angry with God. That's a topic I want to, I ask me please to be on that show. Go ahead, Shar.
Lekia, are you writing that down?
Technically, yes, she already messaged me, so I already have it.
Yeah, but a lot of people are, they have periods in their life where something happens that their mind cannot wrap around. They either feel like something was done to them extremely unfair, or some trauma happened to them, or one of their family members that they just feel like wasn't really deserved. And so I know a lot of people spend a lot of time being angry with God because, we have that thought process. If this is a loving God and I am one of his children, why did he allow this to happen? Or why did he allow me to go through this pain and degradation and so on and so forth? So that would be my topic.
Absolutely. Tracee, you have any?
That's a good one. I feel like I lived through it, came out the other end of that too. So, I don't know. How about cultural things? Like, I'm from a mixed family, so my mom's Asian, my father's American. I was born overseas, and just like we were talking about, like the different parenting is very different from when we grew up. I mean, I was born in the 70s and grew up through the 80s and 90s. So, my mom parented very different than how I would parent my kids. Right. I mean, ooh, like we got every, like the paddle, the stick, like we got it all. Whatever it was. And but even then, it's like the cultural, like then, like the food we ate was not acceptable. When I took Korean food to school, like kids would laugh at me. It was, it was hard to blend in. I mean, it was very hard because I was the only Asian, and even I'm only half at that, so it was really hard. And then now, like the kids, like that's fancy, like that's called sushi, and I'm like, yeah, that I think that stuff that was like what we ate. You know,
Look what they did with ramen, right? Look what they did with what we used to eat, and now it's all this fancy stuff with ramen and mixing in restaurants and all
our
this
10-cent ramen.
Right.
You know, basically.
Noodles. Charnay, you got anything?
I would, if you can write this down, I would like for
It's
us.
being recorded, so
Huh?
I
You're
said
right.
it's being recorded, so
So I had two, but they may go hand in hand. The soft skills. A lot of people don't have soft skills now. So it either be soft skills or effective communication.
Ooh, good one too.
yeah, we talk a lot about soft skills because we need to do that episode because I've been labeled as not having soft skills so much to the point where I was like, it's not that I don't have soft skills. Like, this is not a soft skills issue. This is I'm just matter of fact issue. You know what I'm saying? I can say it but definitely we need to do that soft skills just because I have lived experience through that soft skills. And you know, a lot of times it's just about awareness, right? Like just not knowing, like, I didn't know that the way I was saying it was coming off like I didn't have soft skills, or years I was in customer service and I didn't have empathy, right? Empathy. I've come a long way. I'm in therapy, y'all. I work with my therapist about how can I get out of this stigma or this label of not having empathy. And even in that, you know, she helped me to see it wasn't that I didn't have empathy. It was the way I was showing the empathy that it was coming across like I didn't have it, but I really did. And so once I got that, like, okay, so I do feel this way when these things happen. I just don't say it. Right. And so that helped me be able to really work through that. And so I can't think of anything. I feel like I want to do kind of on the lines of cultural, but blended families, more of that step parent, stepmom, that type of blended and the children blending, the, you know, differences.
Yeah.
But then this morning, and I think that's a good one too, because this morning on the radio here in Dallas, it's called Didi in the Morning. And then she has this part where people go into her DMs, right? And they give a story. So this morning, there was an episode of somebody went into her DM and it was a same-sex blended family. And the person wrote it was the wife who wrote in, and she was saying that she feels like her wife's children should call her mom. So it was that I was like, oh man.
Yeah.
So the blending, because now families look totally different. To women, to men, you know, so it's
all right, you guys. Well, thank you so much. This has been good. I, again, grateful that you came on. And again, just everyone look forward to future episodes. We're going to keep doing this as long as we feel led to do it, because one of the other things as we end is this was an outlet for her and I to just be able to share, right? Like if nobody ever listened, it really was about us having a conversation and being able to talk through some things. And we've been able to heal. We've been able to learn. We've been able to grow through some things just from having this platform and being able to come and do it. And so we thank you guys. We appreciate you. Sharon, any final last words before we end?
You touched on something about being a platform. So because it's been therapy for us, Lekia's son, my nephew, we launched his podcast through our platform because he's a young man and he has struggles and stuff and he loves to talk. So his podcast is J Talk.
Yes.
So it's on and he tells us, so we're the guests, but we, are monitoring, and he'll say his previous episode was
about actions. Yes.
Action. So it's a family event. It's a family affair and I'm so thankful that we have this. And like she said, if we don't have it, nobody listen. It's me and her. So thank everyone out there for supporting and loving us and sharing the episodes. Lekia, where can they find us?
So we are on YouTube, Unapologetic and Free Talk Show. We are on Facebook, Unapologetic and Free Talk Show, Instagram. Anchor is where our podcast version of this. So you can listen to us on Spotify. You can go through anchor.fm or you can go through Spotify and you can look up. I'm sorry.
Apple.
And Apple. And as always, you guys, whether you listen or whether you watch it, we always put all the information in the show notes. So it's going to be, if you're listening via Spotify, the show notes are going to give you all the links to where you can find us. Same thing if you're watching this on YouTube or you're watching it on Facebook Watch, it'll always have the platforms where you can find us, follow us, comment, share, feedback. We want to hear from you. Thank you guys and have a good evening.
Bye.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you.